And with only a few days to go before polling, Mr. Powell re-emerged into the spotlight to urge his supporters to vote Labour, a remark which prompted one of them to call him a Judas.
Judas was paid. Judas was paid. I am making a sacrifice.
No, sir, the British people do not mean it, because they still have not been able to credit the implications of being in the common market. They still think they will be a nation. They still think they will govern and tax and legislate for themselves. They are mistaken. It's not the fault of many of the pro-marketeers that they are mistaken, but it is a thing so incredible to them that I'm not inclined to blame them overmuch.
Yes, the Commission does want to increase its powers. Yes, it is a non-elected body, and I do not want the Commission to increase its powers against this House. So, of course, we are differing. Of course, the chairman or the president of the Commission, Mr. Delors, said at press conference the other day that he wanted the European Parliament to be the democratic body of the community. He wanted the Commission to be the executive, and he wanted the Council of Ministers to be the Senate. No. 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 Perhaps the Labour Party would give all those things up easily. Perhaps they would agree to a single currency, to total abolition of the pound sterling. Perhaps, being totally incompetent with monetary matters, they'd be only too delighted to hand over the full responsibility, as they did to the IMF, to a central bank. The fact is, they have no competence on money, no competence on the economy, so yes, the right honourable gentleman would be glad to hand it all over.
Well, my view on Europe is very simple. We had this bloody war which cost millions of lives, and then we had to decide how we reacted to Europe. And I took the view that having fought them, we should now work with them and cooperate. And that was my first thought about it. Then when I saw how the European Union was developing, it was very obvious that what they had in mind was not democratic. I mean, in Britain you vote for a government and therefore the government has to listen to you, and if you don't like it you can change it. But in Europe all the key positions are appointed, not elected. The Commission, for example, all appointed, not one of them elected. And the way that Europe has developed is that the bankers and the multinational corporations have got very powerful positions, and if you come in on their terms, they will tell you what you can and cannot do. And that is unacceptable. And my view about the European Union has always been, not that I'm hostile to foreigners, but I'm in favour of democracy. And I think out of this story, we'll have to find an answer, because I certainly don't want to live in hostility to the European Union, but I think they're building an empire there, and they want us to be a part of that empire, and I don't want that. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's my argument.
But let's just look at this issue of democracy within the European Union and the threat posed by it. My honourable friend from St Peter's has already told you about the scandalous Irish experience, where if the people give a wrong result, they have to get to vote again until they give the right result. That happened in Denmark as well, and it happened in Holland, and it happened in France. Though in the case of Holland and France, what did they do? They changed the constitutional treaty into the Lisbon Treaty, and then didn't allow anyone to vote at all. So you just push it through, because if the electorate don't like it, well, you try and get another electorate who may like it.
If we got rid of crazy EU regulations against wonky, wonky food and veg, fruit and veg, then we wouldn't lose 20% of what British farmers produce at the moment, because it can't be used because supermarkets won't stock it.
I've got nothing nice to say about the EU at all. I really haven't. I think it saps the life and the icing off of our farmers.
If this thing was genuinely going to help people to understand what is going on in the debate, there might be a case for it. But given that I think it's very likely that it will be very biased and hysterical and warning unnecessarily about the risks of leaving the EU, I think it's a complete waste of money. The fact is that if we stay in this system, which is completely, in my view, politically bankrupt, we will be locked into a system where we continue to send about £20 billion a year to Brussels, only £10 billion of which comes back, much of which is misspent. We will continue to have about 60% of our laws made effectively by the EU, and we'll be locked ever tighter into a federal union of a kind we never signed up to. Now, I would like the government actually to put those facts before the people. That would be a useful thing for the public to have before them as they come to make up their minds.
What do you say to the taxpayer whose money's been spent making these leaflets?
I just think it's crazy to use quite so much taxpayers' money on stuff that is basically intended to scare people and to stampede people in one direction. I think what we want is a proper, informed debate, and if you are going to use taxpayers' money, you should allow people to put the other side of the case as well.
But